A few weeks ago, I uploaded an audiobook of Ralph Waldo Emerson's Self-Reliance here on the channel. If you've been wondering whether it's worth your time, or if you've seen the title but weren't sure what the essay is actually about, this video is for you. Today, I want to explain why self-reliance has remained one of the most influential essays ever written, and why its message is just as relevant today as it was nearly 200 years ago. Why everyone should read Ralph Waldo Emerson's Self-Reliance. There are some books that give you information. There are some books that entertain you. And then there are books that quietly change the way you look at yourself. Self-Reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson belongs in that last category. Although it was written in 1841, its message feels surprisingly modern. In many ways, Emerson was writing about problems that have only become bigger in our own time. He writes about peer pressure. He writes about the desire to fit in. He writes about the fear of being judged. He writes about following the crowd instead of thinking for yourself. These aren't just 19th century problems, they're human problems. That's why people still read this essay nearly 200 years later. The language can be difficult. Emerson often writes in long, poetic sentences, and sometimes you may have to stop and think about what he means. But don't let that discourage you. Behind the old-fashioned writing is one of the clearest messages you'll ever read. Trust yourself. At first, that sounds simple. But Emerson spends the entire essay showing us why it is so difficult. From childhood, we are surrounded by expectations. Parents tell us what success looks like. Schools teach us what we should believe. Friends influence our opinions. Society tells us what kind of career is respectable, what kind of lifestyle is desirable, and even what kind of personality is acceptable. Without realizing it, many people spend their lives trying to become the person everyone else wants them to be. Emerson asks a dangerous question. What if the crowd is wrong? What if the opinions that surround you are preventing you from becoming who you really are? His answer is that every individual has something unique inside them. Every person has thoughts, instincts, talents, and ways of seeing the world that no one else possesses. But those gifts only matter if we have the courage to trust them. One of Emerson's most famous lines is, "Trust thyself." It's only 2 words, but they summarize the entire essay. He believes that your own conscience is a better guide than public opinion. That doesn't mean believing you're perfect. It doesn't mean refusing to learn from others. It means listening to your own judgment instead of constantly asking other people what they think. Imagine you're standing at a crossroads. One road is safe. Everyone approves of it. Your family likes it. Your friends understand it. Society rewards it. The other road feels more meaningful to you, but people might question it. Many people choose the first road simply because it is easier. Emerson says that choosing the second road often requires courage, but it also leads to a more authentic life. One of the ideas that surprises many readers is Emerson's criticism of conformity. He believed that society often rewards people for acting alike. People dress alike, think alike, speak alike. Even their dreams begin to look the same. According to Emerson, this creates comfortable lives, but not necessarily meaningful ones. He isn't telling people to be different just for the sake of being different. He's saying that if everyone is copying everyone else, originality disappears. Progress disappears. Great ideas disappear. Every major discovery, invention, and work of art began with someone who was willing to think differently from the people around them. Another famous sentence from the essay is, "Imitation is suicide." This doesn't refer to physical death. Emerson means that every time you abandon your own ideas just to copy someone else, you lose a small part of yourself. Think about today's world. We're surrounded by influencers, celebrities, entrepreneurs, and successful people telling us how to live. We watch videos about morning routines. We copy productivity systems. We compare our careers with strangers online. There's nothing wrong with learning from successful people. Emerson would probably encourage that. The problem begins when admiration becomes imitation. When we stop asking, "What works for me?" and start asking, "How can I become exactly like someone else?" No one can live your life better than you can. Another idea Emerson returns to again and again is independence. He doesn't just mean financial independence. He means intellectual independence. He wants people to think for themselves. Instead of accepting an idea because everyone believes it, he wants us to ask, is it actually true? Do I believe this because I've thought about it? Or because everyone around me believes it? This kind of thinking isn't easy. Independent thinkers are often criticized. History is full of people who were mocked before they were admired. Emerson reminds us that almost every new idea sounds strange at first. If everyone immediately agrees with you, you're probably not saying anything new. One section of the essay discusses consistency. Most of us worry about contradicting ourselves. We want our opinions to stay the same because we're afraid people will accuse us of changing. Emerson thinks this fear is foolish. He writes one of his most quoted lines, "A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds." What does that actually mean? He isn't saying consistency is always bad. He's saying that refusing to change simply to appear consistent is foolish. Imagine believing one thing at 20 years old. Then you spend 10 years learning, reading, traveling, meeting new people, and gaining experience. Should your opinion stay exactly the same? Of course not. Growth means changing. Learning means changing. Wisdom often means admitting that your old beliefs were incomplete. Emerson gives people permission to evolve. Another important theme is self-respect. He believes we often give away our confidence by constantly seeking approval. We ask people if our work is good enough, if our opinions are acceptable, if our dreams are realistic. Little by little, our self-worth becomes dependent on other people's reactions. Emerson argues that this is a mistake. Real confidence comes from inside, not because everyone applauds you, but because you know you're acting honestly. One of the most interesting parts of the essay is Emerson's discussion of greatness. He points out that many of history's greatest people were misunderstood during their own lives. People laughed at them, ignored them, criticized them. Some were even hated. Yet history eventually remembered them because they stayed true to their convictions. Emerson isn't saying you'll become famous if you trust yourself. He's making a different point. If your goal is simply to avoid criticism, you'll never accomplish anything original. Every meaningful achievement requires the willingness to disappoint someone. The essay also encourages readers to live in the present. We often become trapped by our past. We think, I've always been this kind of person. Or we worry about protecting our reputation. Emerson tells us not to become prisoners of our own history. Who you were yesterday doesn't have to decide who you become tomorrow. You can change. You can grow. You can discover new interests, new beliefs, and new purposes. That's part of being alive. Reading Self-Reliance isn't always easy. Some pages are dense. Some ideas require careful thought. Sometimes you'll find yourself rereading the same paragraph more than once. That's normal. This isn't the kind of essay you race through. It's the kind you return to. You might read it once when you're young and think it's about confidence. Read it again years later and realize it's about freedom. Read it again after another decade and discover it's really about honesty. The essay grows with you because your life changes. Different passages become meaningful at different stages of your life. Perhaps that's why people have continued reading Emerson for nearly 2 centuries. The world has changed dramatically since 1841. Technology has changed. Politics has changed. The economy has changed. But people still struggle with the same questions. Who am I? Am I living according to my own values? Or am I simply following the crowd? How much of my life belongs to me? Self-reliance doesn't claim to have every answer. Instead, it encourages something even more valuable. It teaches you to ask your own questions, to trust your own mind, to accept that being misunderstood is often the price of living honestly, and to remember that your life becomes meaningful not when you imitate others, but when you have the courage to become yourself. That is why Self-Reliance remains one of the most influential essays ever written. Not because it tells you what to think, but because it reminds you that you are capable of thinking for yourself.